I'm going to hate myself into loving myself. I realized that that's just so ironic. I always felt really lost. I didn't really have this like overwhelming confidence that I was like, this is who I'm going to be. At 33, I thought I would be married by now. I thought I'd maybe have a kid or two. You were not lost. You were just buried. And you have to peel back what was never yours. When I removed all the shit, there I was. And it wasn't this like creating of me. It was literally just the finding of me. The right person and the right love in your life won't make you anxious. Safety is the new chemistry. You don't need to apologize for evolving. Some people loved the version of you that was convenient and not actually authentic. You don't owe loyalty to things that don't honor you. Like staying is not strength if it costs you anything. Hello and welcome back to Ambitious. Today we are going to be going through something that I posted on Instagram and I got so many messages about. So I have decided to dedicate today's episode to really diving into this. This past week, I turned 33. And this is something that really, like, as a Leo, I would love to make this a bigger deal. Obviously, we always do. I feel like all Leos make their birthdays a big deal. And I would love to say that this is a big deal. But to me, it was just like, okay, great. 33. This was a very reflective time because I realized there's so much that has gone down in the last decade, but also especially in the last year. And 33 is actually, as a number, there's a lot of symbolic references to it. From a faith-based perspective, it is what's considered to be your Jesus year. In angel numbers, there's a lot of symbolic connection there. And with that, I started to be like, okay, 33, like, what is this year going to look like for me? I started to think back on all the years leading up to this and kind of how I got to this place. And I also thought, okay, well, what are the lessons that I've learned in getting to 33 that I really want to have awareness of so that I can learn from those and maybe integrate that clarity into the coming years, or potentially make sure that I never make those mistakes again. And I feel like first, I would say if you haven't taken a moment of reflection, I really recommend it because I think so many times it's another year, right? It's another year under our belts. It's another milestone we pass. And I think so often life is moving so fast that if we don't take a second to just like step back and take it all in, we miss it. And this really was an invitation to say, okay, great. Like, I'm never going to be this age again. I'm never going to be younger than this current moment. And I think we are always just in this kind of like tilt-a-whirl, right? Of life. There's always just so much going on and everything is so busy. And so I think birthdays they can be fun. They can be a time to be able to reflect on what's been and also reflect on what it is you're calling in for yourself or what you want this next chapter of your year to be. It's kind of like a built-in accountability system to your growth when you think about it. And so I sat down and originally I had kind of been just reflecting on everything happening. And then that kind of started to kind of unravel the process of my, brainstorm of like, what have I learned? And there's been a lot of stuff that's happened in getting to 33, but there was also some kind of fundamental takeaways or fundamental beliefs that I learned. And I wanted to share some of those with you today. So I can't guarantee that we're going to get through all 33. We probably won't, but I'm going to pick out some of the ones that I feel like have really been something that I've learned in getting to this place in my life. And so one of the things I want to say is, first of all, if you have not seen the post that this is originating from, where all the 33 are documented, I will make sure that that's linked beneath for you so you can go to that. But one of the ones I wanted to start with was this aspect of shaming yourself into being something that you want to be. And I will say for most of my life, I feel like I have always tried to like quote unquote bully myself to do things that I wanted to do. I would try to bully myself to go to the gym. I would try to bully myself to eat better. I would try to bully myself to get up and work in a certain day or every day when I didn't feel like doing it. Like I would really find that I would be kind of like mean to myself. My inner dialogue to try to get myself to do things was very rarely from this place of desire and from this place of, wanting to be this thing or wanting to step into this version versus I should. And I think the word even should has this undertone of shame to it. And so I realized that so much of the things that I've made progress in have been a byproduct of me shaming myself. And that progress that I made as a result of that was very short term. I feel like I would have moments where I would be really consistent with the gym and then I would fall off. And I'd be really consistent with eating, but then I'd fall off. And I realized that like transformation in any bucket of our life has to be from a place of looking to really personally understand yourself and your why, not out of this place of punishment. And I think that there's a lot of reasons we do that, right? It may be something that you learned growing up. It could also be something that, society has kind of taught you is quote unquote normal. And I think that I've realized that the biggest change that I am ever going to experience in anything that I've ever done is really when I'm compassionate for myself. And when I really have that compassion to say, okay, well, what do I want to achieve? Why do I want to achieve it? And how can I love myself into this version of what I want? So, even for example, if we think about eating healthy, a lot of people will say, like, I can't have that or I shouldn't have that, right? And I think that even that language is problematic because if we think about, the idea of I should, again, is associated with shame. But I think, okay, well, if I really want to feel my best, what would I eat right now? If I really cared about my body, what would I eat right now? If I really wanted to give my body nutrients, what would I pick right now? And so I think that that's a very different conversation than, I should or should not be eating this. And the same thing with the gym. I think for a long time, I, always had this desire to look a certain way or be smaller, even though I wouldn't say that I don't know where that comes from in the sense of I don't know why I need to be smaller. But I realized that I had a lot of just this not good enough. And I kept, trying to punish myself by doing things that were, I tried to do fasting or I would try to, do things like calorie deficits. And I'd be really aggressive with this, like punish my body to get this body that I want. And I think as women in general, we have a lot of narratives around what we're quote unquote supposed to be or supposed to look like. There's a lot of really aggressive messaging, which I think is part of why we feel this. But I just realized that like I was literally expecting to punish my body and to talk poorly about myself and to put myself through the ringer in these different things that I would do and then hope through that process that I was going to find somebody and find, a body that I love and a person that I love. And I realized that that's just it's so ironic to say I'm going to hate myself into loving myself. And I think that that for me was a big takeaway in every bucket of my life. It's like I can't shame myself into working to build this empire that I want. I can't shame myself into going to the gym. I can't shame myself into eating better. I have to say, okay, well, if I really want, whatever the outcome is or whatever the goal is for myself, I have to ask myself, well, why do I want that? And how is that something that I could do? Or what is the process of what that would look like? If I really loved myself, what would I do? And I even had a friend who asked me that and they said, what would you do if you loved yourself? And it's such a simple question, but it really is a reflective thing to sit with. So we had been talking about it. The reason that that came up, we had been talking about it in the context of like Botox and filler. And I just want to first of all say like I have both of those things. So I'm not trying to say anything one way or another about Botox or filler. But I remember she asked the question of, with all the things that you do for your body or to your body, what would it look like or what would you do if you loved yourself? And it really just started the reflection of like, why do we do these things? Right. And just having an awareness of why do we, go and get the acrylic nails and why do we go on these, crazy diets and why do we, go and get Botox and filler? Like, why? It's not a matter of to say it's right or wrong. It's just to say why. It's just to have the inquisitive question to say why. And it made me realize that if we approach questions like that from a love based place, instead of critique, instead of criticism, we're going to find a better answer, which is to really acknowledge where does this come from and how can we love ourselves into change versus bullying ourselves into change. I also found that kind of in the same vein, another lesson was the fact that the wellness you're looking for within your life, within your body, within your, harmony of your lifestyle is not going to be found in extremes. And I will tell you, I am an extreme person, okay? I am this person who's like, I am all or nothing. I am the 0 to 100, and I am known to be that with a lot of the people in my friend group. Like, I don't do anything chill. Like, I will either be a couch potato or I will be like deciding that I'm doing a 10K, right? Like, there's nothing in between. I'm not like the person who's like, I go for walks, right? But I realized that while, there's a part of that that is like an identity of how I've always lived, those extremes are not actually supportive or beneficial for me in the things that I want to achieve within my life. And I think so many of us, maybe even yourself as well, you find that you go to these extremes. It's all or nothing, it's one side or the other. And I found that sometimes those extremes were what was really setting me up for failure because I had this belief, this perception, this expectation that if I was going to go from where I am to where I want to go, it had to be this huge, massive leap. And we know that, momentum is made in the small milestones. It's not made in this big overarching thing you're doing. And the other thing I learned from that was that my all or nothing, what I used to think was like, I go hard and I like really care about, really attacking goals and all these things that I would label it. If I really got down to it, it was this deep need to prove myself or to something or somebody who I don't know. I'm still working that out. But it was this need to like really prove to myself that I could do it. And I remember asking myself the question of like, well, why do you need that confirmation? Why do you need the confirmation you could do a 10K? Why do you need the confirmation that you could go to this extreme number in business? Why do you need the confirmation that you could do this extreme thing? And also, is there potentially more reward, more identity, more unlock that comes from not the accomplishment of the big thing, but from the consistency and the pursuit of making it happen? Right? So maybe the accomplishment is not in the running of a 10K and hitting a certain timeline and all of those things. Because again, when that day comes and it goes, what does that really mean about me? Nothing. But when we think about the pursuit of that 10K and the pursuit of that goal and the training it would take from me, the consistency it would take, the nutrition it would take, the rest it would take, the mindset it would take on the days that I don't want to do it, but I did it anyways, that process of creation of who I'm becoming in pursuit of that goal, that's really the win. That's really the unlock of the person that I would want to be proud of, not the accomplishment of the thing. And even for me in business, achieving seven figures or achieving a multiple seven-figure business, I don't even really know when I distill down to it why that is something that's so important to me and frankly even to other people. Like who cares? Like if you hit $1 million business or if you hit a $900,000 business, what's the difference? Right? What's the difference? Like there's no difference. That $100,000 doesn't mean anything different about you. Just because you hit that number doesn't mean anything different because guess what? The woman who created the $900,000 business a year versus the $1 million business a year both needed consistency, both needed to show up in a certain way, both adjusted their identity, both put in a lot of effort into pursuing that. There's still a lot of evolution that came from 900 or a million. So what's the difference? And what I've realized is the extreme is something that puts this really far out as well goal and this goalpost way out there. And it, I think potentially on a deep level allowed me to feel peace in failure because I realized that if I put this really, really extreme goal out there, right? So let's just say I'm like, I want to, 4X my business this year. Well, when I only 3X it, I'm like, well, 4X was a crazy goal in the first place, right? Like we start to I realized that I started to maybe potentially put these big goals out there too to find peace within not accomplishing it and being able to hit something lower. If I put it out as this huge, huge stretch thing that really is this massive goal for me, then maybe I could make peace and not actually hitting it because it felt so extreme in the first place. Right? So there was a lot of awarenesses of how extremes became something that allowed me to hide in that. It became a hiding of identity, a hiding of the process, a hiding, the failure. There's a lot of things that I unpacked from why do we go to extremes for things we want? And what would it mean if we no longer lived in extremes of achievement, but instead in the milestones or the momentum and the process of what it took in pursuit of those goals? I also realized that something that I've struggled with for a long time, but I think I'm starting to really make a lot more peace with now is that you shouldn't take direction from people who have not stood where you are looking to stand. And we often hear this, don't take marriage advice from people who aren't married, don't take financial advice from people who are not financially savvy. But the thing that I don't think it's a matter of judgment of those people as much as there's just the person who hasn't stepped into the fire can't describe the heat. So there's also just this lens of it's not to say anything good or bad about those people, but if you really want to better understand something you're going for, you have to know who you're asking and why you're asking. So I realized that sometimes in certain parts of my life, I was getting advice from people in certain areas that frankly, I didn't want their outcome. Like I would ask people about relationships who were in situations that I didn't want to be in. And so what I realized was every time that I really want to get advice or insight on something, I at first ask myself, has that person been through what I want to go through? Because if not, it probably is not somebody that I'm going to take advisement from. And it's not to say anything good or bad about this individual or the person in your life that you might be thinking of. It's just to say that, like, am I really getting advice from people who understand what I'm talking about and what I'm looking to achieve? And so, like, if I'm trying to really be healthy, should I be asking someone unhealthy about health advice, right? Like, or like if I'm really trying to be in a healthy relationship, but I have a friend who, is in a toxic relationship, do I feel like maybe that's the person I need to be going to for this advice? And I think so many of us have this, circle of advisory, right? We have these people around us who we take advice from, whether it's a friend, could be your mom, it could be your dad, a sibling, maybe, and you take advice from these people in your circle, but we never really ask ourselves, is this the person that I should be getting the advice from? Is this the person that I feel like has the experience and has run this race and who has been through this experience and who's taken these steps to really know and have experienced in real life what this looks like, not in theory, right? And so it's even when, you think about maybe you're a mom or you're wanting to be a mom. Like, I'm not going to take my parenting advice or my mom advice from anyone who doesn't have kids because they don't know. Like, they haven't been through it, right? And so, like, for me, when I get to that place where I want to have a family, it's not going to be about like, hey, let me ask all my single friends what they think I should do as to XYZ. It's like I will go to the moms in my inner circle that I deeply respect, that I know who have walked the fire to be like, hey, tell me about the heat. Like, what am I going to experience? What are the things that I'm going to go through? And I think in a situation like that, you think to yourself, well, duh, of course you would talk to other parents about parenting. But then why do we not do that in other areas? Why do we not do that when it comes to money, right? Like if we're trying to build wealth, are you talking to someone who has built wealth? If you are wanting to build a business, why are we talking to your inner circle who none of which have a business? Go and ask somebody who has a business, who's built multiple businesses, what they see. If you're somebody, for example, who is trying to find yourself maybe within your faith and it's something new for you, as even for me in the last couple years is new for me, I try to now surround myself with people who live and embody their faith day to day. And I try to look at, okay, well, what does that look like? Or I might even surround myself with someone as well who is in a newer part of their journey with faith and say, well, what does this feel like for you? And how are you navigating X? That is something that I find has allowed me to realize that I'm not having as much conflict anymore. I used to have so much conflict with, trying to get advice from people that hadn't really experienced anything I was looking to do, and then also getting frustrated with the advice that I got back. And I would try to, they always kind of use that term like beat a dead horse. I would feel like I would constantly go to certain people for advice or for advisement and then be frustrated with the advice I got and go back again in the hopes of getting something different instead of realizing I'm going to the wrong place. Like you're going to the wrong place for the information and the insight that you're looking for. Maybe the reason that you're not getting the clarity you want is because you're not going to the right place to go find it and to go receive it. And so I also think this connects to another lesson that I learned, which is that oftentimes I think many of us are seeking outside of ourselves for answers. And this has been an interesting one for me because, as I was noting, I'm kind of like, I would say in the very infancy of like my faith journey. And I had something that happened to me a couple years ago And I remember I went to, my mom and I had said, "Hey, like, can I borrow your Bible?" And she was like, "Sure." Like, obviously I could have gone and bought one, but I just was like, I knew she had a bunch from when we were growing up. And so I said, "Can I borrow this?" And I remember that, I would say faith is the first bucket where I've really gotten clarity from in me, which really ultimately was like, with God. And this is not to say that you have to believe this one way or another. Like, your beliefs are your own and you should make that choice for yourself. But this journey for me made me realize that I was so deeply hoping somebody outside of me knew what was right for me. And truthfully, I don't even think that people know what's right for themselves. Like, I think oftentimes all of us are looking for this external, like, somebody tell me what to do. And I feel like faith was the first time that I really started to understand that no one has that answer for me. And if anything, God is really the only one who has this path understood. He knows what is to come for me, He knows what is no longer serving me. And it made me realize that I needed to stop looking for answers in other people because most of them don't even have the answers for themselves, let alone for me. And also, if I'm looking to somebody else to give me answers, it also means that I have to realize that they are giving me advice based off their lived experience. Okay. So they're seeing the world through a set of goggles that have been developed from their upbringing, their culture, their experiences. They have a certain bias in which they see the world. So their set of lenses and the way that they see the world may not necessarily be the same way that I want to see the world or that I do today. And so to take advisement from those people around me can sometimes mean, okay, well, like, do they have the answers for me? And I think many of us, and I'm not someone who I would say is very woo, but I do really feel like this year I learned the power of intuition because I think that I have had over these years in different buckets. I had this intuition to start this business. Like, I had this pull that told me I could do it when even though I had no evidence it was going to work. I had a pull that told me, certain relationships weren't serving me, but I couldn't really make sense of why that was. I just had this gut feeling. And I think so much of certain processes, I would try to get advisement from someone else, thinking external evidence was going to finally give me this clarity that I needed. And I think that I've learned time and time again the hard way, having this intuition of what I need to do, but trying to have someone else tell me to do it. It only ever happened when I decided to do it. It only happened when I got over my own fear and said yes to something or no to something. And I learned that fear is so much louder than knowing. And that awareness is, I think, part of what has kind of intertwined with my faith journey because I realized that there is this, I have a knowing, like I have a knowing of what I need to do. I have a knowing of what doesn't feel right for me, but I would just always have so much noise. Right. And so I remember someone had shared a quote with me and they said, and again, this isn't really about religion by any means. This is just about, internalizing this in however this lands for you. Someone had said to me, have you ever gotten quiet enough to hear God? That was a really interesting quote that he had shared with me because it landed deeply for him and it caused a massive transformation in his life. But it also made me realize that maybe I am just so overwhelmed with so much fear and anxiety and, all of these things that are coming up for me that I haven't really been able to sit with silence of like, do I know? And it's crazy because every time that I've taken silence, every time that I have really created space in my life, that's when these massive monumental things have happened. And I feel like it was only when I took space in nature, it was only when I took space in a journal, or it was only when I took space, to even just go sit in a sauna. It was these small little moments. But when I took these moments, it was like everything, almost like noise canceling headphones. Like someone tuned out the background noise and I could finally hear myself. And it made me realize that, like, I have so much clarity, and you have most likely a ton of clarity that is sitting in you right now that you just can't tap into because you're so overwhelmed with outside noise. And outside noise can be anything. It could be social media, it could be business noise, it could be your parents who have very vocal opinions about what they think is right for you. It could be a friend group that you feel like are very vocal about what they want for you. Whatever it is, I think that there's a lot of noise and we have to ask ourselves, is that noise where I'm trying to get my clarity, or is there an opportunity here for me to get quiet, to really listen to what I feel as intuition is coming up, maybe what my faith is telling me is the right move, whatever that, voice for you is, have you actually created space to listen to that? Because that's not something that maybe you need to be going outside of yourself for. Maybe you have that voice in you. You just got to crank up the volume. And cranking up the volume is not saying, well, how do I tune into that? It's actually removing the noise that's blocking that message or that clarity from getting through in the first place. And this is actually what happened to me a year and a half ago when I went to, Montana. I sat in nature and I broke. Like, I broke. And I'm from Toronto, I'm around a lot of stimuli all the time, I'm around a lot of people, I'm around a lot of noise, and I hadn't really been with myself, and then I go and I do this, and I have this, like, overwhelming, like, tsunami of clarity, and it was so overwhelming, I didn't know what to do with it, and I realized, I was like, "I feel like I've had this pull that I need to do something, but I haven't been able to listen to it until this literal moment." And it was the worst moment timing wise, but my intuition was like, "Girl, you know, you know what you need to do." And maybe for you, it's starting a certain business, and maybe it's a certain move you have to make. Maybe it's a relationship thing. Maybe it's a health thing. Maybe it's whatever the bucket is. But I think you have a knowing in something right now that you probably have a lot of noise that's blocking your ability to hear exactly what to do with it, which is causing it to kind of stay underneath the surface. And I think once we tune into that, there's so much unlock that can happen in us and in our lives. I also will say that, I've learned a lot about urgency. I think many of us are rushing our timelines, and that can be in so many different things. You can rush your timeline in, maybe it's buying a house. You rush your timeline in when you want to get married or have kids. You rush your timeline in business. You're like, I have to hit this income by this time. And I realized that sometimes urgency is really out of a place of fear, and that wisdom and the things that are right are often kind of waiting underneath the craziness and the noise that's happening, and that we really have to learn that there is wisdom in waiting. And I think about this a lot with myself because truthfully, at 33, I thought I would be married by now. I thought I would be married. I thought I'd maybe have a kid or two. I thought, I would just be in a different place in my life. And I thought when I was a kid and I had this kind of timeline for myself that it would all work out differently. And I will be honest, this is still something that I'm navigating because I still have this teeter totter of kind of going back. I do it less than I once did. But I just have this deep fear of like, will it happen for me? Will I, get married? And when will that happen? And will I have, the kids? And will that happen? And when will that happen? And I start to have all of this, like, I feel like I have to do it now, 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 now. And I remember I went to my therapist and I said, I really want, I'm like, let's go already kind of thing, right? I felt like this urgency around things. But I realized that that urgency is something that is really completely action based out of fear. And it's not really helping me to get the true life that I want or the true outcome that I want. And I would invite you to look at areas that you want something urgently. I realized that when I really wanted to be married, like I really have all my life because I came from a divorced kind of chaotic upbringing when it comes to the family unit and all of that. I really just wanted to recreate that for myself. And I have that awareness now through therapy. Bless your heart, Linda. But I have this awareness now that like I've always wanted this family unit and I did want that because I never had that. So I think when I would get into relationships, I would want to find my person. I wanted to settle down, if you will. I wanted to, find my partner. I wanted to get married. I wanted to have kids. But because I was so urgent, like, let's do this, let's do this, let's hit this outcome, I don't think I sat enough with, like, yeah, I want to be married, but like, is this the person I want to be married to? Or I want to have kids, but is this the person I want to have kids with? And, life has humbled me in ways to kind of bring that to the surface. But I realized like my urgency was what was driving this show. And so I was so focused on the timeline. And I tell people, like, I was so focused on the urgency of getting this perfect picture, having all these puzzle pieces make this picture, that I never asked myself, like, do these pieces, meaning do these actions, do these mindsets, do these behaviors, do these people make that picture? Because like you want a marriage and you want kids, but like, you want a partner, but like, is this your husband? Right? Or like you want kids, but do you want kids with this person? Like you want money, but do you want money this way? Right? Like I never, I think, was asking myself the critical questions along the way because I so deeply was just like feeling behind. And what I realized now this year is that I remember my therapist said, what would happen if you wrote off the next year of your life? And originally I was like, I would have a panic attack. Like, I was like, if I lost the next year, I would have a panic attack. But she's like, no, sit with it. Like, what would it look like? And I realized that, I was like, I have to just like surrender that like the urgency is what's causing me anxiety. The urgency of when it's going to happen and how is it going to happen and all of these things and trying to rush through life is what's keeping me from missing what is right in front of me. Whether that thing is amazing or whether it's not working for me, I wasn't seeing either of it because I was so focused on the future and what was going to be and when it was going to be and how it's going to be. And I realized that urgency doesn't always allow us to see truth. And urgency is keeping you from having the experiences you need to have and having the clarity that you need to have and having the journey you need to have to be ready for that thing. I think so many, even in business, I see so many people are like, I want to 5x my business this year. And I'm like, but you want to go and you want to skip 7 steps ahead without going through any of the awarenesses or the clarity you need to have to be ready for that stage. Like you want to have a 7-figure business without learning any of the lessons of the pursuit of the 7-figure business. And so like for me, I realized that there's so many things that I wanted, but I'm like, this moment in time right now is where I'm going to learn the lessons that are prepping me for the thing that I want. So I would encourage you to ask yourself, where in life are you being urgent? Where in life are you not allowing there to be wisdom in your waiting? And that was something that I realized I need to learn to sit in the waiting. And waiting is not like sitting on your hands and being like, hope and pray this happens. It's also working within the waiting. It's realizing there's wisdom in the waiting, but that also requires you to be working within the waiting, having awareness, having intention, reflecting, tuning into the behaviors that are working and not working, not just kind of like literally waiting out the clock. It's saying, how can I, in this moment, take leverage of what's in front of me, still have this intention for the future, but realize that everything is going to happen in the way it's destined to happen. But I still got to keep working within this moment because that's where the wisdom's going to come from. I also realized that, success has kind of been rewritten for me a little bit in the last year. And that's because I think success previously for me was something that I thought when I achieved blank, whatever that thing might be. If it's achieving maybe for you like a certain income goal, maybe it's a certain amount of followers, it could be, certain amount of accolades. So it could be also like physical things. Maybe it's like, getting married, having a house, whatever it might be. I think that I've really realized that there's so much of my security that I was putting into this destination happiness. And I realized that even with success with the business, I really did believe that I was going to feel better probably about myself, about my life, about business and where everything was as soon as I hit a certain target. Like if I just had enough money, if I just had enough followers, if I just had enough exposure, if I just had enough downloads on this podcast, right? Like whatever it is, I always had this kind of success and safety will come when. And I think that's a very scary place for you or I to be because it means that we are allowing ourselves to feel unsafe in a given day until we do that thing. And what I realized was for me that safety in success only came from me rewriting what success meant to me. And it was once I realized that, what? No amount of money is going to make me like my life. You have to like your life right now. Like, if you don't like getting up and working on your business right now, that's actually what you should be working on and healing yourself with, not necessarily, then I have to go make 4 times more money because then I'm going to like to work. If you don't like working now, you're not going to like working when you have 4 times more money. Like, you have to love the process. And I realized that a lot of my belief around success was this destination happiness. And I have done a lot of work to fall in love with the process and not with the destination in business. And also remembering that my success constantly being this moving mark was a very problematic place to be in business because it meant that you were never content. You were never okay. You were always going to need more. And I see people chase this all the time. It really is this like more trap where you're never okay. You constantly need more leads. You constantly need more sales. You constantly need more exposure. You need more followers. You need more money. And there's also other layers of where that can come from. But you want to ask yourself, like, if I'm not, safe in my current level of success, then am I really going to be safe in 5 times this level of success? Right. And I think that we create home along the way. So I really also realize that a lot of your safety cannot come from the success you have in your business. Also, with that desire for fast growth, I learned that speed doesn't mean anything if you are not working in the right direction. In the last, year and a half, I kind of went from this like go, 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 push, 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 never sleep type of person to realizing that like I don't want speed if it's taking me in a place that I don't want to go. I don't care how fast we're going. If I'm going in a direction I don't want to go to, then it doesn't really matter. And I realized that I was so focused on scaling so fast, like so push, 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 more, 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 that I never asked myself, if I get there, is that even what you want? Like, if I'm going to take you on a trip, but I'm taking you to Texas versus California, do you even want to go to Texas or do you want to go to California? That's really not a question that I asked myself. I was like, great, we're making traction. We're making movement. We've, hit another mile. We've hit another destination. We're making traction. And that for me was, financial. The speedier that I can, generate this income, the better I am, the better off and more progress I've made. But I never really asked myself that question, progress in comparison to what? Like progress based on what? And I think so many of us want to rush results. And you want to ask yourself, is it about just doing it fast or and like in whatever way that, gets you there in whatever place that allows you to arrive at, or is it really about if it took, and I ask clients this all the time when they tell me they want like a $6 million business. I say if it took twice as long but you got to the 6 million and you were obsessed with your business, your lifestyle, and you loved the process the entire time, which do you prefer and why? And I realized so many people just want speed for the perception of having the speed. Like they don't even really necessarily know why they wanted it to go that fast or why they needed that to happen. They just wanted it fast. And, speed is not always the marker of success. It really may allow you to get to this place because you're so heads down in the weeds of just fast, fast, fast that you don't really look up to even figure out where are you going. And I feel like that's where I got. I got to this place where I realized that I was just looking for grow, 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 but I never checked in to be like growing in the direction we want, growing in toward the place we want to go to. Because if that's not happening, why am I excited we're getting there soon when I'm getting to a place that I don't even want to go to? And so I think success and speed and kind of understanding those two places were really important for me. Another lesson that I had in this post as well that I had talked about was you were not lost, you were just buried. And you have to peel back what was never yours. And then ultimately, that's where you are. And it's interesting because I feel like this year and a half, which is crazy because I'm 33, is like the first time that I feel like I'm actually getting to know myself. What I mean by buried is like I always felt really lost. They feel like for most of my life, I've kind of felt a little bit lost. Like I didn't really have this like overwhelming confidence that I was like, this is who I'm going to be and this is what I'm going to do. I've always felt and wondered like, am I doing it right? Like, is this what I'm supposed to do? Is this who I am? Like, am I an extrovert or am I an introvert? Or, you know, do I want to live here or do I want to live somewhere else? Like I always just had this like intense internal conflict. And I always kind of felt lost within myself. I didn't know, like those moments where you ask yourself, like, is this who I am? Like, am I living aligned? Is this who I'm pretending to be? Or is this who I actually am? I don't know if this is making any sense to you, but I realized that when I removed all the shit, there I was. And it wasn't this like creating of me. It was literally just the finding of me. And it's so hard to explain. I feel like I removed all these beliefs and labels and projections and all these things that I had been brought up to know I had removed all these labels of who I was told that I was. And these are even small things, right? Like if someone's like, oh, yeah, like she's really a social butterfly. In my head, I was like, no, I'm not. Like, I am the person who loves to take a good evening to like rot in bed with a bowl of soup and watching some, trash reality TV. Like, that's something that I would say if I had my pick versus that or going to a huge event, that's where you're going to find me. You're going to find me in the sheets. So I personally found that there were so many things that were put on me as a label. And I didn't even realize how much of that I was integrating. And so I started to say, what of that feels true for me? And also, I started to think about what were things that were given to me as beliefs? What was programming that I was given? What were things that I was told to be true? Did I actually believe those to be true? And so once I stripped it all away and I started to literally, I want you to almost think about like sorting what your parents told you to be true, what your friends believe of you, what people say, oh, she's the funny one, or she's the spicy one, or she's the whatever. When I started to remove all of that stuff, I'm like, who am I? And I think that I didn't realize how buried in other people's beliefs I was, or in what other people had told me I was. And so once I removed it all and I was like, that doesn't feel true for me, that doesn't resonate, that doesn't land, and I started to really sort, that's where I figured out the true self of who I was. And part of it was still there, meaning like I definitely, have been like a little spicy girl since I always had these like little like kind of like quick jab thoughts. I've always had those. I've been like that since I was like 6. So like some of those things are still true that I love kind of like a hard hitting truth, etc. But there was also things that I feel like didn't land for me. And I realized that's not who I am. And that I'm embodying this because other people have kind of told me or, kind of placed this label on me. Or I would find there was things that maybe I was given as a label that I didn't want to have as a label. Like I didn't want to have certain identities that other people associated me with. And I was like, that used to serve me, that doesn't serve me any longer. And so like I'm done with that and I'm moving on from that. And so I really realized that we many times struggle to understand ourselves, or we struggle to understand what's right for us or what's wrong for us because we're told what's right for us and what's wrong for us. And I think it's only once you can really know yourself. And it's crazy because I was talking to someone about this the other day at brunch. I feel like many of us, maybe you, we don't really know ourselves. Like we say we do, but do we? Because I think there's so many people who are 30 who are like, I feel like I'm just now finding myself. And I feel like this moment in time in my life is like the first time that I'm kind of starting to feel really comfortable in my own skin and really comfortable with my own boundaries and really comfortable with my choices and my friend group. And like I'm really curating. This is the first time I really feel like at a deep level, I'm curating my life. Like I'm really being intentional with how I'm showing up, the thoughts that I have, and the behaviors that I have, and the people that I have. And I realized that that only came though after a shedding process of all the things that I needed to create space for. I couldn't create this new life without releasing all these other things that had been my quote unquote old life. And it's a really freeing place. And I realized I also, part of the label I had to release was this shame, if you will, of not knowing who I was at 30 years old. Like I thought, oh my gosh, what does that mean if I'm 30 and I don't really know who I am? But I realized I think that there's, people who are 60 who don't really know who they are, right? Like there's, unless you've done the work, you don't know. And I realized that I didn't want to be 60 and not know who I was. And I didn't want to wait any longer. And I wanted to do the work and to dive in and to decide that if there was parts of me or parts of my life that I didn't feel as activated by, like I wanted to unpack those and make change within that. And I'm really happy that I did. The other one that I would also say, obviously in the last year has been a big one for me, is that the right person and the right love in your life won't make you anxious. Safety is the new chemistry, and regulation is the real spark. And I think so many, movies, so many things tell us that there's like this like really like intoxicating love, right? You meet somebody and you're just like, oh, I just like have this like, overwhelming infatuation and I'm just like, I'm off my hinges because I'm so obsessed with this person. And it's interesting because I think for many, I'll speak for myself. I think for me, I really loved that feeling. I really loved like the obsessed with each other kind of, roller coaster of emotion. But I don't think I asked myself maybe enough if like, does that roller coaster change? Does that roller coaster stop? Because if the roller coaster continues, do you want to be on a roller coaster for the rest of your life? And there is, in a way I can't really describe, I realize the power of the right person will know how to just calm your nervous system. And when you meet somebody, you won't have anxiety and you won't question yourself and you won't question your worth and you won't wonder if you've lost yourself in the process. And, to be transparent, I have just had relationships where, I remember I had a partner who had eyes, is how I'll put it, had eyes elsewhere, wandering gaze, I think is how they call it. And I think that that made me really anxious and it made me really question myself. And I just never felt safe in the relationship. And I was trying everything to not think about this and not remember this and, kind of just look away and like try to make it work and try to figure things out. And I realized that the right person as a partner will know how to love you like the right way without you having to break it down every step by step as a curriculum for them. And I don't think I gave enough weight to that. I realized that, I used to kind of have this space that I would create for other people where I would make excuses. Well, oh, like he didn't grow up with, parents who were XYZ and he didn't grow up or he hasn't done this work or but he doesn't know XYZ or whatever. And I would always make these excuses. And then I realized that like what if someone just knew how to love you? Like what if someone just knew how to support you and how to hold space for you and how to be there in the moments where you're completely unglued and how to give you strength when you don't have it and how to see you when you feel like you don't see yourself. Like, what if that existed? What if that was there? And I realized that, like, when you really are truly aligned in your love life, you won't have anxiety. And I really used to struggle with this idea. People would say, like, oh, when you know, you know. And I'm like, what the heck does that mean? Like, what? How can that be? And I get it because I think now that I've really sat with, what that looks like and what that means, when you know, I do think I think your body knows. I think your brain knows. Like it sounds really silly, but like can you sleep like a baby around this person? Can you feel like you can be your ugliest, messiest, craziest self and the most unglued part of you and that they can hold space for that? Do you feel like they know how to love you without it being broken down? And I just realized that the right person is just going to give you this level of safety in your life that you won't have to explain. And I realized that like I don't want to coach somebody completely from front to back on like how to love me. And I do think, communication is important in relationships and you should express what you need and things. It's not that. I didn't want to feel like I was like this broken machine that needed to hand someone a step-by-step manual. And I realized that if you do, that may just mean that you are not with the right person. And that doesn't mean anything bad about them. It just means that they don't really know how to navigate maybe or operate a person like you. And I realized that when it doesn't work out, which is another lesson, and I struggle with this a lot this year, is that like I have a lot of things that I know about why my relationships have not worked. And it's hard because all you want to do is like tell people. All you want to do is just be like, "Oh, if you only knew though that like XYZ happened." Like when I left my engagement, I felt so much shame and I felt like I needed to tell people why and how I got there. Like, I was like, they need to know because I feel like they're going to think that I'm awful and they're going to, think XYZ or assume XYZ. And then I just realized that, like, I don't owe anybody my story. Like, I just don't own anybody my side of the argument. And if people cared to truly deeply understand, they would call me, they would ask me. And there's going to be people who make up their side of the story on something that happens. And I think that I've realized that there's just no gain in trying to get the last say or the last word in. Like there's no gain in that. And the process of the engagement taught me that because I could tell that there was definitely, a opinion on the other side of the table of like who I was. And while I know that's not true, and while I know I have a lot of evidence and things that I could share that would make people go, "Oh, I just you don't owe everybody an explanation." And like if you are seeking that in something, maybe even this with a client, you're like, I need to get this last word, or I need to get like they need to know though that this wasn't how it was supposed to go down, or they need to know that this was not, my fault, or they need to know that this is whatever. Why do they need to know? Like, why does anybody need to know your side of the story? And I realized that the only reason I wanted that is because I wanted people to validate that I wasn't a bad person. I wanted people to validate all these things that truthfully were just things that I was bullying myself around. Again, that internal dialogue. I was being mean to myself and I wanted someone else to tell me I didn't have to be mean to myself anymore. And instead, what I did is I just gave myself that permission. I just said, like, girl, you're good. Like, things happen. We all navigate things. And like, just because you have and you're sitting on this information doesn't mean you have to share it. Like, this is yours. And like, move on and create peace in your life. And like, that is a chapter and a book that is closed. And you get to move forward in this new book. And like, there doesn't need to be this, positioning of your end because like no one needs to know. It doesn't matter. And some stories are best in silence. Like, and I really think that this is just one of those stories in my life that, like, of course, the inner people in my circle know, but other than like probably four people, like, no one knows. And that's okay because I realize, you know what? Like, they can think what they're going to think. And this is going to be a silent version of my story. And that's going to be it. And I don't owe anybody the other side. And I think that, with that, I also will say that another lesson I learned is that every version of you is what got you to this point, and you shouldn't resent your past. You should thank your past for carrying you. And I think this year I had to do a lot of healing with past me. I feel like I've made so many mistakes in my life. Like back to obviously what I was saying about, timeline. I always had this vision of what I wanted to do in my life and where I wanted to be by whatever time. And then because I'm not there, I went down the spiral of like blaming myself and telling myself that I'm the reason that I'm, should be there. I could have been there sooner, but I made this mistake or whatever. And I, for a while, was so just focused on like bullying myself that I did it wrong, or bullying myself into like, I should have done X sooner. I should have done it faster or better or whatever. And I just, again, I realized that those mistakes were like every single one of those was a lesson. Like I had to learn what business done the wrong way was for me to learn how I wanted to do business in this era the right way for me. I had to learn, what was not love to learn what love was. I had to learn, what being healthy or kind to my body was not to learn what it is in this phase. Like I had to unlearn all of those through those past experiences to get to where I am. And I think even for you, if you think back on all of the chapters of your life, what are maybe decisions that you're like, could I have undone that? Or could I have not experienced that? And probably, yeah, if you did, you would ask yourself, would I be where I am? And like all of this stuff and all of this shit that I have been through is the reason that I have the armor on me that I have today. It's the reason I have the mindset that I have today. It's the reason I have the heart that I have today. And I wouldn't change that. And so I think the only reason that I ever change it is because I have this belief that it was wrong. And that's because I don't really look at why it was right. And so I look at now my past experiences and I say, what did I learn from that? Or what was the takeaway from that? And I think the most important thing to make sure that you're not in this loop of feeling, resentful of your past is I think resentment comes from the lack of reflection. We're resentful of our past selves or our past life because we haven't really reflected on what it gave us. We're only reflecting on what it took from us or what we thought we wanted, right? Taking also assumes that it means you were supposed to have something. Well, what if that wasn't yours to have in that chapter? What if that was not supposed to go that way. And there's so many things that I've learned from my failures or from my mistakes, if you will, and from my past. And I was actually talking about this in the context of love the other day. I was talking to somebody about, they were saying, how do you feel about love now? And I said that, I feel like every relationship that I've been in has really been something that taught me something amazing. I had one partner who was just like a big teddy bear, and he was just like loved on everybody. And I realized that I just really wanted someone as a partner who was very, very kind and who was like tons of love to give and was just like a big teddy bear. And then I had another partner who was very disciplined and who was very consistent. And I thought, wow, that's something that I really admire in a partner, which is someone who can say what they're going to do and do it. I had another partner who, was really like just like funny and lighthearted and like just was kind of like a big kid energy. And I realized like I really always want to stay in a relationship with somebody who can play and who can like have fun and be goofy and like not take life too serious. And again, like if I just look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I wasted all this time, like I would say now for what I will manifesting set as like my husband, I think that I really know who I want and I really know what I care about and what's important to me. And I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't gone through everything that I've gone through. And even which we talk about in my journey episode, which we have a couple episodes dedicated to, you'll see a lot of my quote unquote failures or things that didn't work out are literally the things that catapulted me into creating the business. And so I've also realized that the versions of me that I was were needed to get me to where I am today. And I think that another big lesson was that friendships shouldn't feel like work. They feel like ease. And I've realized that obviously, we've talked about relationships today, but there's also the friendship side, which is, do the friendships that you're around feel like ease and feel like flow and feel like coming home to yourself? And like I have a very, very like best friend. She's basically my sister. And when we're together, we don't have to try. Like I don't even have to think. Like I'm just like I'm just being. I'm just like in my being. And I realized that there's just such a power in being around the right people, and the right people who are friends for you will know how to be around you. You ever had that like friend that you're with that you feel like every time you hang out, you're like, it's just ease and it's fun and it's flow. And like, I'm not anxious and I'm not stressed. I'm not like overwhelmed. I'm not talking about heavy stuff. Like, we're just like literally having fun and living life, and we can be and hold space for each other. That to me is like the epitome of the best friend that you can have, because I realize that like friends should feel like coming home. That's how I want to feel in a friendship that I have. It's like being around people who feel like home, who can sit on the couch in their sweatpants and hang out with you and be talking about nothing and it still be a great time. Or like I had a friend over recently and we were sitting on the couch, and like before we knew it, we're like, oh my God, it's literally midnight. Like, what is happening? And she's like, I gotta go. We were just literally on the couch just talking about like everything. And I don't even know. I feel like she was there for hours and we were just going and going, and we were just sitting on the couch chatting. And it just was like you lose track of time because you're so present with each other and you're having such a good time. And I think that that really is like the basis of what true friendship is. It's like really being able to sit with each other and be able to just feel like you're at home in one another's company. And I also will say a total separate thing that I've learned this year is that healing is really interesting, because healing shouldn't be something that you feel like you need to perform. And you don't have to prove that you're over things. You don't have to prove that, you're moved on from something. Like your healing process needs to and gets to be yours. And like it doesn't need to feel performative, and you don't need to feel like you're on some timeline of how you're healing through something. I realized that, when I went through everything this year, I kind of was like trying to like be over it. Like I was trying to really just get over it. And it's interesting because as I record this, I'm now seeing somebody right now, which is amazing. And it's interesting because there was a moment that came up, and it was like a trigger of something that happened. And I got really emotional about my past relationship. And I remember being so self-conscious because I thought, oh my gosh, he's going to think that like I'm not over this and like I should be over this because it's been like over a year now and like whatever. And I remember him saying, like, you were with this person for 8 years. Like, it's okay to be upset. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to have flashbacks of memories and whatever. And I remember, like, I, in that moment, realized that, like, I was trying to prove I was over something. And like I've had, and maybe you've had things that have happened in your life, traumas that have happened, experiences that have happened. And you tell yourself, like, I'm over it, I'm over it, I'm over it. And you're like, you're trying to tell yourself you're past it. But what if we also just like created space that you don't have to be past it? Like, what if you just allowed yourself to still be like, no, you know what? I'm still kind of in it. Like, I feel like for me, I had things that happened. I don't even know when I'm 33. When I was 20, I had things that happened that I feel like still now, if something came up that triggered it for me, I probably would still get emotional. And I think that that's okay. Like, that's human. And I realized that there's so many things in my life that I was trying to kind of prove I was over or prove that I had healed from. And I'm like, why? Like, why am I trying to prove that I'm over this? Why am I trying to prove that I don't care when I'm just having an experience where something's being brought up for me? And when I realized in that moment, when I was really, triggered by something, I was trying to perform my healing. Like, I was trying to prove that I had healed instead of just realizing that healing is really this kind of ever evolving non-linear journey where you don't have to have this destination of you're done. It's just kind of ever flowing. And on the same vein, I also want to say that you don't need to apologize for evolving. Some people loved the version of you that was convenient and not actually authentic, and growth does not always get an applause. I've grown a lot this year, and I'm very happy with myself, and I'm very proud of myself for everything that I've done and that I've learned. But there's a lot of people who I know right now are probably not happy with me. They're not excited about my growth. They're not excited about clarity that I had, or they're not excited about changes that I made. And that's okay. They're allowed to have their own experience of it. But I realized that, like, I'm not going to apologize for changing, especially if the change that I'm making is for the greater good of my life or of myself. And I realized that there was I had a shame in evolving for a bit there. I felt like I needed to be loyal to this old part of me. I needed to be loyal to, well, this is how I had been, so this is how I have to stay. And I felt like, other people knew me to have been a certain way. And so I have to stay that way. And I think it's just okay to grow. It's okay to evolve and say, you know what? I don't want X anymore, or I don't want to be like this anymore. And I don't want to show up in this way anymore. And I want to just give you the permission slip that you might have people in your life who are only comfortable around those versions of you. And that when you change, you're going to feel some serious resistance. And you're going to be like, oh, should I change? Maybe I shouldn't be evolving. Maybe I should just stay the way that I was. Just because someone is having a reaction to your changing and you're growing and you're shifting does not necessarily mean that the way in which you're doing it or the call of which you have for yourself to change is wrong. And I think that that's something that I needed because I realized that, which is another lesson, not everyone is meant to come with you, and access people had to you is not permanent. Growth is not really about just constantly expanding and adding on more people to your circle. It's actually about refining it and realizing that as you grow, you have to surround yourself with people who are aligned with the version of you that you're wanting to become, who are at a minimum excited for you to create space for that. Like, if I ever felt like I had a friend who knew me, for example, in high school, and they were like, well, this is who you were in high school and you're not this anymore. I'm like, I would freaking hope so. I'm 33. I was in high school. Like, of course I'm not going to be that version. I'm hoping and planning and working to outgrow her because she is not the me that I want to be forever. And I realized that, someone had said to me, well, I was talking about growth, and they said something along the lines of, well, you knew who I was when you met me. And it was interesting because I realized, like, I do. Obviously, I know who you were when I met you, but I also never assumed that we were just done. Like, I never assumed we were done evolving. I never assumed we were done growing. And I realized that, like, I don't want to ever have shame for expanding myself, especially if it's in a way that's positive and, beneficial for me and for my life. And on that vein, another lesson kind of all wrapped in one is that you don't owe loyalty to things that don't honor you. Like staying is not strength if it costs you anything. And this was something I really struggled with because I believe deeply in loyalty and I believe deeply in, investing time and energy and continuation into things that you have put energy into. I'm like, I really do believe in seeing that through. I do believe in, where you've planted your seeds, you need to nurture them. But like if the plant is dying, it's dying. Like you shouldn't just sit there and be like, more water, more water, more water. Like at a certain point, it might not be able to be revived, and just sitting by it, hoping and wishing something changes is not loyalty. Right. And so I realized that there's certain things that I was staying in, not even just relationship wise, but like business wise, friendship wise. There was things that I was staying in that I believed were like loyalty to our friendship or loyalty to the business or whatever. And I'm like, there's no strength in staying in something that is literally slowly minimizing you or impacting you. Like, that's not something that you get a gold star for. Loyalty is not losing yourself in the loyalty. And that was something that was an interesting and a difficult lesson that I had to learn, was that like I cannot lose myself in being loyal to X, whatever that thing might be. And the other thing that I would also say is that closure in something is not necessarily something that you get from something else or someone else. It's something you give yourself. And I think closure in business is also really interesting too, because I think many people, if you have like a team member that doesn't work out, you might find that you don't get closure with that. If you have a client that was disgruntled with you might not get closure from that. And I think that it's important for us to recognize like closure really is what we're seeking from somebody else that oftentimes is just within us. We create our closure. And I think as someone who has had a lot of open loops in my life, I recognize that like closure is not something that if I have situations where people are like, aren't you angry about that? Or aren't you pissed about that? Or annoyed about that? Or even sad? And I would say, yeah, but like at the end of the day, I'm not like, I'm asking that person to meet me at the level of which I've met myself when they haven't met themselves there. So, like, even if I think about, my dad, who I don't have a relationship with, and I think about the fact that I would love to, it sounds weird, but like get closure as to like how that was a very open loop that still is open in my life. Yeah, could I, go and take these steps to get closure? I could, but like he's not going to say anything to me or, provide anything for me that's automatically going to be like, "Amazing. I'm healed." Like I I don't need that. I realize that the only thing that I need is to adjust my own perception and experience of what happened, and to find how I can forgive myself or, support myself or love myself through the process. I'm not going to get any of that from somebody else, because it means that in trying to get closure from something or someone, you're expecting that thing or person to have the same level of awareness that you do. And oftentimes that's not the case. So, a great quote that I heard is that people can only love you or support you to the lengths in which they've loved or supported themselves. And that landed for me because I realized that I wanted support from other people in a way that they were not equipped to support me. And I kept trying to be like, but why? But why? Like, this should be possible with this person. Yes, it would if they were on the same journey as you and if they had the same clarity and awarenesses that you do, but they don't. So, because of that, that's something you got to give to yourself. And it's been one of the most powerful things that I've done in my life, because I realized there's so many open loop experiences where I have felt, shafted, or I felt impacted by something. And I'm like, I'm trying to get this healing from somebody else when really I just need to give this to myself. This is just like something I need to do for me. And I have created closure in areas in my life that have never needed or involved somebody else because I've just made peace with it myself. And this other one that I will say has definitely landed for me is that faith is not knowing how something is going to work out. It's trusting that even if everything falls apart first, it will figure itself out. And I would say part of the reason that I kind of feel a peace, I would say kind of, because I'm not fully there yet. I'm working on it. I'm working on it. The reason I kind of feel a peace in my life is because so many things that have happened I would have never foreseen happening and like I would have never guessed, but also kind of were key pieces to getting me like to be in this chair recording this podcast as I'm talking to you now. And where I am in this moment, even in time as I'm recording this, is all a byproduct of all these things that didn't work out. And I try to anchor into that and realize that all of the things that are not working out are prepping me for what's going to work out. And I now am blessed to have a lot of evidence to tell me that, which is like the things that didn't work out in school led me to become an entrepreneur. The things that didn't work out in X relationship led me to X relationship. The things that didn't work out when it comes to, for example, certain, business things that we did led me to the business clarity that I have now. These pieces that didn't align were unlocking and creating space for the next version of what was going to be and what was going to happen and what was going to work out. And faith is, or, belief in yourself, in your life, in your business is really a matter of not knowing how it's going to work out, but just that it will work out the way it's intended to. And I think that that's kind of a little bit part of why faith has been a newer journey for me. I had so many things that had kind of happened back to back in my life, which some would kind of, I guess, label as traumas. When I had these things happen to me, I literally could not make sense of why is this happening to me? Like, why is there so much drama? Like, why was there so many things that were happening over and over? I got so frustrated with all these things that were happening. And I tried to be like, how and why? Like, how is this working out? And why is this working out the way that it did? And I got so frustrated. And then I started to realize that I was trying to make sense of steps that were leading me to now. So, like, I would be the person who I almost want you to think about like you're on a path and it's not well lit and you're trying to take a step. You're like, but what's the next step? And you're like, just keep walking. Like, just keep walking. And I kept always wanting to know, like, but what's next? What's next? Why is this happening? How could this happen? And I was trying to make sense of it all. And I realized that everything that has been happening is literally creating the now. Like it's all evolving to now. And you may even see this in your own life. You have things that are happening right now. You're like, well, if I hadn't, broken up with Tom, that I would never would have met Steve, who's now my husband, right? Or maybe if I had, never had X experience happen, I wouldn't have known that I could, have kids. And then that led me to this. And it's like, okay, great. And now you have a beautiful son or daughter. Or you didn't feel like school was working out and you felt like you didn't land when it comes to school and education, but then that kind of catapulted you into being a business owner and now you're crushing it, right? Like there's so many ways that we can tie back pieces, but when you're in it, you're like, this doesn't make any sense. This doesn't make any sense. And like I have those moments all the time, all the time. And I think that that's why I've had to have something bigger than me to believe in, because otherwise I get so microscopic on like what is happening in front of me right now and how is this happening? What does it all mean? And I'm like analyzing it. It's only once I pull back and I'm like, everything is going to happen in the way that is meant to happen for you and for your life and for me and for my life. Like, it's just all it's going to be fine and it's all going to happen in the way that it's meant to. Now, here's the thing. It does not mean, though, that it won't fall apart first. And that's the thing that I had to make peace with. It wasn't, I used to think faith was like, everything's good. Everything's going to work out. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's all just like peachy. And then something would happen and I'd be like, whoa, 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 whoa. This is not it all working out. This is not at all happening for me. But what I realized was I only had like this belief or this faith that it was all going to work out as long as the entire process was seamless. Then I was like, amazing. I love this path. This is great. When I would get on a path that was super messy and things were falling apart and I felt like, what is going on? I realized that I had this like shedding that had to happen of all of these pieces literally falling apart around me for me to be like, okay, I trust you. I trust you. Like I trust you, whatever that is for you. It could be the universe. It could be religion. It could be God. It could be whatever. But if it's just like, okay, I trust it. I trust it. I trust it. It's really easy to say you trust it when everything's going your way. True trust is tested, right? And so when we think about trusting that it's all going to work out, maybe even in your business right now, you're like, I'm trying to trust that this is going to turn around, or I'm going to trust that this is going to grow and scale. I'm going to trust that this team member is going to work. having faith or having trust in something is not in the absence of there being trials. And so I think that's also has been something that's been a big awareness for me is like I used to trust as long as there was an absence of trials. When I started to experience trials, I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. This is not what I had manifested, right? And I started to be like, are we on the same plan? Are we hearing each other? Right. And I realized a great quote that someone had passed along to me is that when you, and again, this is not about necessarily faith specifically, but however this lands for you. When you, I think I'm going to butcher the quote, but basically the sentiment of it was, if you ask God to move mountains, you're going to wake up with a shovel. And I realized that that was something that I hadn't made peace with. And only since making peace with that do I feel actually at peace in my life, because I realized that even when things are twisting and turning and happening, and I'm like, whoa, like this is not how I've envisioned this happening, I'm trusting. I'm trusting that there's a reason it's coming up in the way that it is, in the moment that it is, in the timeline that it is. And I have to just surrender to the fact that this is somehow a piece of something that is to come. I just can't see it yet. And so those are some of the 33 lessons that I shared on our post on Instagram. And so today was a little bit more, I guess I would say, of a personal episode. And I had someone share with me, they said, I'd really love to, hear you expand on some of these 33 lessons, because I feel like they are on Instagram much shorter in the sense of short, punchy, one or two liners. But they had really asked, could you share some of your experiences around how you got to these lessons and how did these takeaways come up for you? And I also want to first of all note that obviously this year was a very, relationship centered healing era. And so because of that, there is a lot of those that are in that vein. But I also feel like the reason that I wrote them the way that I did is because I don't really want these to be like my healing list of this year. I would love this to be something you can find yourself in, and to say, well, how does that apply to me? So if I take away, some of the stories or insights that we shared today, and I just think about the principle, reflecting on these, and maybe, some people have taken these 33 and they've sat with what this looks like within their life. And so that could also be something that if you feel helpful or supportive that you could do. So we will have the link to the post from Instagram in the show notes for you so that you can go and check it out. If you want to go below wherever you're listening or watching and you want to check that out, you can. And I also just want to take this as a second as well to just say thank you for being just an amazing human and spending this time with me and listening in every single week. I cannot tell you how much it means to me and to the incredible women that support this podcast to have you tune in and listen frequently. And so you guys know who you are, the OG listeners who are listening every single week. And I also want to say thank you for all of those who've reached out to me. If you have not reached out to me, my DMs are open, but I always love to hear from you as to maybe, certain episodes that land for you, certain topics that land for you. And even today, like if maybe there was a lesson or a takeaway or an insight that you feel like I shared that really lands for you, I would love to hear and just chat with you about what that is. Because as I said, and I feel like I often will tell you guys that this really does feel like an echo chamber. I'm like here in my house recording this podcast, and I always love to hear from you. So if you want right now to take a moment to just slide into my DMs and say, hey, Kate, I listened to the 33 episode and here's the takeaway that I had, it would mean the world to me. I always love to hear from you. But with all that being said, I will see you on the next episode. And as always, stay ambitious.